At 75, Cybill Shepherd remains one of Hollywood's most recognizable faces, the icy blonde beauty who once lit up screens with a single glance, the woman who stole scenes in the Last Picture Show, redefined the sitcom with Cybill, and became a pop culture icon through moonlighting. But behind the fame, behind the glamour, behind the bold personality that captivated audiences for decades, lies a journey far more complicated, far more painful, and far more human than most people realize. Because Cybill Shepherd's story is not just about stardom. It's about the price of it. The battles fought in private. The heartbreaks that shaped her. The career struggles she never deserved. The industry backlash she faced for speaking her mind. The family wounds that cut deeper than fame could mend. And the long, silent war with aging in a career built on youth, perfection, and impossible expectations. Now, at 75, as she reflects on a lifetime of triumphs and traumas, the truth becomes clear: the tragedy of Cybill Shepherd isn't one shocking event, it's the slow accumulation of battles waged across decades. Battles against Hollywood's cruelty. Against love that broke instead of healing. Against a system that punished her for being outspoken, brilliant, and unapologetically herself. This is the heartbreaking story of Cybill Shepherd, not the actress America adored, but the woman who fought harder than the world ever knew. Before Cybill Shepherd became a Hollywood legend, she was a young woman from Memphis with a striking beauty that turned heads long before she ever considered acting. By 18, she was already a pageant winner and a rising model. Her face appeared on magazine covers, in fashion spreads, and in storefront windows. People saw perfection, the cheekbones, the blue eyes, the effortless allure. But behind that immaculate image was a teenager thrust into a world that valued her appearance far more than her voice. Her life changed forever when director Peter Bogdanovich saw her photograph on a magazine cover. He was mesmerized, convinced she was the perfect embodiment of the character in his upcoming film, The Last Picture Show. Almost overnight, Cybill went from small-town girl to Hollywood sensation. The industry couldn't get enough of her. She was declared the next big thing, a blonde bombshell with potential to dominate the silver screen. But fame arrived at a cost. Cybill was inexperienced, unprepared for the intensity of Hollywood's gaze. She faced critics who dismissed her as just a model, journalists who scrutinized her every move, and producers who valued her beauty more than her growing talent. For every compliment she received, there were whispers that she didn't belong, that she was handed opportunities she didn't earn, that she would fade as quickly as she had risen. And behind the scenes, her life grew even more complicated. Her highly publicized affair with Bogdanovich placed her at the center of Hollywood gossip. Every headline felt like a weight pressing down on her. Cybill tried to hold on to her identity, but the industry had a way of reshaping people. Directors wanted her to play one type of role. Studios pushed her into images she didn't choose. Even audiences expected her to remain the flawless beauty they first saw on screen. The pressure was suffocating. Then came the box office disappointments, films that critics savaged, performances dismissed before they were even understood. Cybill, once hailed as a prodigy, became a target for ridicule. Headlines mocked her. Producers stopped calling. For a moment, it seemed like Hollywood had decided her rise had been a mistake. But beneath the doubt was a fire that had been burning since her earliest days in Memphis. Cybill refused to disappear. She refused to let the industry define her worth. She fought back, determined to prove that she was more than a pretty face, more than tabloid rumors, more than Hollywood's projections. Her fight for artistic survival would soon lead her to one of the most iconic roles of her career, moonlighting, a role that would resurrect her reputation, challenge the industry's expectations, and introduce struggles no one could have predicted. When Moonlighting premiered in 1985, Cybill Shepherd wasn't just making a comeback, she was rewriting the rules of television. The chemistry between her and a young Bruce Willis was electric, the kind of dynamic studios dream of but rarely achieve. Their rapid-fire banter, explosive arguments, and undeniable spark captivated audiences immediately. Ratings soared. Awards rolled in. And for the first time in years, Cybill felt seen not for her beauty, but for her talent. But success has a shadow. And for Cybill Shepherd, it was darker and heavier than anyone outside the set ever knew. The moonlighting set became infamous for its intensity. Long shooting days. Demanding scripts. High-pressure expectations. Cybill and Bruce were both perfectionists, brilliant performers, but stubborn, fiery, and unwilling to compromise when they believed they were right. The media turned their on-set tension into headlines, portraying Cybill as difficult, temperamental, even uncontrollable. What the world didn't see was the impossible strain she was under. During the height of moonlighting, Cybill became pregnant with twins, a joyous moment in her personal life, but a challenge the show couldn't easily accommodate. As her pregnancy progressed, the demanding schedules, the physical exhaustion, and the emotional toll grew unbearable. She pushed through scenes while battling fatigue, swelling, and constant scrutiny from a production team that worried about ratings more than her well-being. Her body was changing. Her priorities were shifting. But Hollywood wasn't interested in change. Hollywood wanted the glamorous Cybill, the slim, razor-sharp, quick-witted star audiences recognized. And slowly, painfully, she realized the industry she had given her life to was not prepared to support a woman navigating both motherhood and fame. Rumors spread that she was holding up production. Whisper campaigns suggested she was the reason for delays. The press painted her as the problem. While Bruce, whose own conflicts were equally intense, was celebrated as a rising star. The double standard cut deep. Cybill felt the narrative slipping away from her. No matter how hard she worked. No matter how much she sacrificed. She was becoming the villain in a story she hadn't written. And behind the scenes, the personal pain only deepened. Her relationship with Bruce deteriorated into quiet resentment. Producers lost patience. The press began circling. And as tensions grew, Cybill found herself, once again, facing the same cruel pattern she'd endured before, a woman punished for being outspoken, punished for being strong, punished for daring to exist outside Hollywood's comfort zone. When moonlighting ended, it wasn't with celebration. It was with exhaustion. Cybill walked away with a Golden Globe, global fame, and a legacy that would shape television forever, but also with scars. The emotional toll of years spent fighting hostile narratives and an industry unwilling to adapt left her drained. People saw the glamour. They never saw the breaking point. But Cybill's story didn't end there. She had another fight ahead, one that would bring her both triumph and heartbreak. When she returned with her own sitcom, Cybill, she expected stability, finally. Instead, she walked straight into another storm, one that revealed the darkest truth about Hollywood's treatment of women. For all the glamour surrounding Cybill Shepherd's career, the deepest emotional battles of her life weren't fought on studio sets or in front of cameras. They were fought at home, in the complex, tangled, and often painful journey of motherhood, relationships, and family. And as Cybill herself has admitted more than once, fame doesn't soften those blows. In many ways, it makes them sharper. Cybill always dreamed of having a big, close, unbreakable family. She wanted her children to grow up with stability, laughter, and the kind of warmth she didn't always receive from Hollywood. But life, in the way it often does, didn't unfold the way she imagined. Raising 3 children while juggling film sets, television shoots, long-distance travel, and constant public scrutiny pushed her emotional limits. She was proud, protective, and fiercely loving, but even her biggest supporters admit that Cybill's intensity, bold personality, and career obligation sometimes created distance, misunderstandings, and painful tension. The pressure was relentless. When Cybill was cancelled and her career took a sudden turn, she found herself at home more often, facing unresolved cracks in her family foundation. She wanted to repair everything instantly, but relationships, especially those shaped by years of exhaustion and emotional strain, take time. And time, for Cybill, had never moved slowly. She has spoken candidly about her regrets, moments she wished she had handled differently, years when work overshadowed connection, seasons of life when emotional exhaustion made her retreat instead of reaching out. For someone known for her confidence and strength, admitting these vulnerabilities was one of her most painful, human moments. The heartbreak didn't end there. As her children grew older and moved into their own adult lives, Cybill experienced the silent grief many parents face but rarely discuss, the ache of distance, the realization that the years had passed quicker than she ever expected, and the quiet fear that she could have done more, been more present, more patient, more available. Adding to the pain was the changing dynamic of her romantic life. Cybill experienced love deeply, passionately, and often impulsively. But those relationships, though filled with intensity and excitement, didn't always last. The end of each brought heartbreak, not just because of the separation, but because she internalized every failure, every fracture, every goodbye. She wanted stability but often found herself rebuilding, redefining her life over and over again. And perhaps the most tragic emotional struggle came as she entered her 60s and 70s. Many actresses talk about aging in Hollywood as a professional challenge, roles dry up, the phone stops ringing. But for Cybill, the pain was personal, not just professional. She feared that the more she aged, the more she would become invisible, not just to Hollywood, but in her own family story. She worried her children's lives were expanding while hers was shrinking. She feared being left behind. Yet through all of this heartbreak, Cybill kept fighting. She tried to reconnect, rebuild bridges, and show her family the woman behind the fame, the mother who loved them more fiercely than she ever loved the spotlight. Some wounds healed. Some took longer. Some still linger. But if there is a single truth in Cybill Shepherd's family story, it's this: she never stopped trying. Because for Cybill, the real tragedy was never failure. It was the fear of not being enough, and the lifelong struggle to finally believe that she was. At 75, Cybill Shepherd stands at a crossroads that few Hollywood icons ever reach with such raw honesty. Her journey, once filled with flashing cameras, red carpets, and the electricity of fame, has transformed into something quieter, deeper, and far more reflective. She is no longer chasing roles, headlines, or public validation. Instead, she is confronting the truth of her life, the victories, the wounds, the losses, and the lessons she wishes she had learned sooner. This stage of her story is not marked by scandal or a singular tragic moment. The real tragedy is something much quieter, watching a woman of extraordinary talent slowly realize that time is the one thing fame cannot conquer. For someone who once dominated screens with effortless charisma, aging brought a kind of heartbreak that is difficult to explain, a sense of slipping out of the narrative she once shaped so boldly. Hollywood, predictable in its cruelty, stopped calling. Not because her talent faded, not because audiences stopped loving her, but because the industry has always punished women for doing what everyone inevitably must: grow older. Cybill didn't retreat willingly. She fought, auditioned, pushed for roles, and tried to reinvent herself, only to face doors that no longer opened. And beneath her humor, confidence, and defiant public persona, this professional fading weighed heavily. It wasn't just the loss of work, it was the loss of identity, the loss of purpose, the loss of the world that once gave her so much energy. But the deeper tragedy, the one only Cybill herself truly knows, is the emotional toll of watching the people around her age as well. Friends battling illnesses. Colleagues passing away. Family members facing their own struggles. Life, once full of... Yet in the middle of all this sadness, something profound happened. Cybill Shepherd learned to meet herself with compassion instead of criticism. She began looking beyond the glamorous image she portrayed and began healing the woman underneath, the daughter, the mother, the partner, the survivor. She repaired relationships that had frayed under the weight of work and emotional exhaustion. She learned to apologize, to listen more, to understand her own role in the pain she experienced and caused. She found solace in quiet routines, in spending time with family, in reflecting rather than performing. Her life is no longer measured in box office numbers or award nominations. It is measured in mornings spent in peace, in forgiveness extended and received, in the quiet joy of being present, something she never had during the peak of her fame. And that may be the final, beautiful twist in Cybill's tragic journey. After decades of heartbreak, pressure, and public scrutiny, she has finally found something Hollywood could never give her, a sense of self-worth that does not depend on applause. The woman the world sees at 75 is not the glamorous force she once was.